right.
Yeah? Did you want to start us off?
Sure. Do you want like an intro? You
Sure.
want me to just wing
Oh,
an intro right now?
I should hit the record button because. Alright. Yeah. Wing an intro. Go for it.
All right. Welcome to Hot Behind, the show where we talk about kitchen stuff and restaurants in the industry as a whole and shit on Applebee's.
Always got to shit on Applebee's.
Always got to shit on Applebee's. All right, we live? We doing it?
Yeah?
All right. You got a link?
Yeah, I can. Do I
that
have
you
a
can
link?
share?
I can just. Do I have a link? That's a good question. That's a good question.
I assume we are at 0 viewers.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I sent it.
Sick.
Never mind. We are at 1.
1?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So did we just want to start at the top of the list that you were?
Yeah, we can do that. We can start off with...
Well, first we should introduce ourselves.
Yeah. You go.
My name is Kane. I've been a line cook for about 3 years at this point. But I've been in a kitchen since I was 16, and I like bread.
Nice.
And you?
My name is Biggs. I've been in kitchens since I was 15, just at 10 years in the kitchen industry as a whole, and I like frogs.
Did you say frogs?
I did.
Dude, frogs are cool.
Frogs are fucking sick, dog.
They're pretty sick.
All right. So, first topic we got at hand. We got health code standards versus company standards.
Yeah.
Now, this is something that I've been thinking about for a little bit here. That I kind of noticed on the last health inspection that I was kind of a part of. What the health code expects from you in kitchens is not upholdable, because generally kitchen companies, restaurants want the food to go out at a certain time, you know, and the time that they want it to go out is just not, it's not feasible with upholding health code, especially when they understaff you to the point where you can't do it in a timely manner.
Yeah. I think part of that is definitely like, because food definitely isn't going out unsafe or anything, like.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, they expect us to hold such a much higher standard than we're able to, and still get food out at a time that's reasonable for people in the restaurant. Like, they expect their food to come out at a certain, like, you don't want to be there for half an hour until your food comes out.
Yeah.
And some of the things that the health inspector expects of you would really slow down to the point where you have to make pretty much everything from scratch sometimes, or that's what it seems sometimes, for each plate, which just is not feasible.
I mean, I've had managers even tell me to, across multiple different restaurants, you know, like, to directly go against health code. And I think that's pretty common practice in most restaurants, is just to, you know, ignore it until they're there.
Yeah.
Which, you know, there are a lot of things that I think that health code overdoes
Yeah.
but generally a lot of it makes sense and it's there for a reason.
Yeah.
But it's not feasible to uphold all of it. You just can't. And I think even health inspectors know that, but they still have to be there to do their
Yeah.
job.
Yeah, it's their job. They have to at least try to find, like, generally a health inspector is at least trying to find something for you to fix.
Yeah.
And I think the like the good part about it is, like, yeah, they're trying to keep us to uphold a standard, but that's because they're trying to protect people from, like, a good restaurant that's following most of the codes and not following otherwise. This doesn't matter. They're never gonna be shut down because of it or whatever. Like,
Oh
there
yeah. You can
is,
get away with a lot before you're shut down.
yeah, it's just annoying for have basically them telling, like, hey, you got to change this, when in our eyes there's absolutely nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, and that comes down to as well, like the standard that is upheld by management and people in the higher positions.
Yeah.
You you can't expect your employees, line cooks, dishwashers, servers, food runners to uphold any kind of standard when management isn't on that page.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing too, is management has to be the one that holds the highest standards in a restaurant.
Of course.
If they're not the ones holding the highest standard in a restaurant, there is something wrong.
And the case with most restaurants, at least ones that I've worked in, that is the case. You generally have managers that are trying to do less work than the line cooks.
Yeah.
And what that creates is line cooks that see that and go, well, now I'm going to do even less work.
Yeah.
And then the whole thing just shuts down.
Yeah. Like, it's hard because, like, as a line cook, yeah, I can see a manager do it one way, and if that's, like, kind of because they have the authority and stuff, if they're doing it a certain way, it's like, oh, I'm kind of incentivized to do it that way too.
Yep.
But at the same time, I also, like, sometimes I look at some of the stuff that some of the managers put out, and I'm like, I don't want to serve that.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, you and I have both seen people in higher positions than us do some pretty whack stuff that are supposed to be the ones that, keep it together and do it correctly.
yeah,
And I think that goes kind of into our next topic, turnover rate. Like, there's a reason why a lot of good cooks end up leaving places, and it's because they see their managers, their superiors doing some whack stuff,
yeah.
and they decide, nope, not for me.
It's also
And
tough too, like, because for the people who are good, we want to work with other people who are good,
yeah,
because we want we don't want to have to pick up other people's slack, and that's another thing that, like, in terms of turnover, you see a lot of times, if you have a good crew going, they'll stay for a while, but then once one of the, like, key pieces of that group leave, it's kind of like a domino effect, and a bunch will leave because then they'll
yeah,
have to pick up the slack,
it
and it gets to
scatters.
them, and you just kind of have, like, this domino effect, and sometimes it can even be like a snowball effect, and we lose people, even better people, even faster,
Yep.
because of that happening, which really sucks because
I mean, in my opinion, if I walk into a new kitchen and I can tell that no one knows what they're doing, it's a big turnoff to me because I'm going to have to be babysitting and training
yeah,
constantly, and I'm not going to be able to just do my job anymore. It,
yeah,
it becomes much more than that. And then, of course, you don't get paid for it,
that is true.
and that's that's a big problem in the industry is just paying your good employees to stay and do a good job isn't a thing. They're more willing to just keep hiring bad people, then do what they need to do to keep the good ones.
I think that's also a problem that, I think that also helps create the problem with turnover and with quality standards and everything is the people you hire and the quality of people that you hire and the standard you set for hiring people is going to be reflected in the work that they do, the food that gets put out, and the service that gets provided. Because, like,
Yeah.
if you're hiring just anybody who walks in the door, you're gonna have to expect the quality of stuff to be the way it is. Whereas if you're actually going out and making sure that you're only hiring people that you truly would want to work with and everything, then you're gonna have a better crew.
Yeah.
And the crew will stay longer when you do that.
And I think the key to having a good kitchen and putting out good food is generally having that core group of people that does a really good job in treating them well. Because if you start getting too many people that don't know what they're doing, you start putting out bad food, and then return customers see that, and then they stop coming.
Yeah.
And then you have the problem of you start losing a customer base that you gained from having this core group of people.
Yeah,
And
and
that's how restaurants go under, is they just start not caring about who they're hiring and the kind of food they're putting out.
yeah, and that's the big thing that a restaurant needs in order to survive is return customers. Like you can't survive on just having people come in once and then never coming back.
Yeah, because there's only so many people in one area. You know,
Yeah.
you can't move a restaurant unless it's a food truck. So
Yeah.
you have to appease people to the point of they're coming back.
Yeah. And
And
I think it's like in certain other places that I've worked, like it hasn't been this, but like there are definitely certain jobs like construction and everything where the same kind of effect would happen where if you have people that are doing a bad job or being unsafe, you're going to drive off the good people that are doing good work and not being safe. But a lot of like normal 9 to 5 jobs and stuff like that, like it seems like it doesn't matter how good or bad your coworkers are, it doesn't affect your work at all. Whereas things like the kitchen and stuff like that, it does truly matter who you work with.
yeah, there's a lot of industries where, you can do your own thing and your coworkers don't affect you too much. This is not one of those industries. We are directly affected by the work that our coworkers do, and if they're slacking, we have to pick up the slack.
Yeah.
And
And
that's it gets frustrating to a point, when you're always closing with people that don't do a good job, they're slacking, they're lazy. You you have to pick it up, and you don't get paid for the extra work. It's unforgiving in that way.
yeah, that's the biggest thing is that it's hard to find a restaurant or a place that will pay people what they're worth sometimes. Because like I can tell you there've definitely been cooks that I've seen that deserve to get paid more than other cooks, and it was the other way around where the not as good cook was getting paid more than the other one on terms of, oh, they had maybe a little bit more experience or was there for a little bit longer. And it's like
Well, that's
I don't
another
care.
thing.
I don't care how much experience you had. I don't care how long you've been somewhere. If you're not doing the same amount of work or not doing as good of a job as someone, you shouldn't be getting paid. Like you should definitely be getting paid for how good of work and how much work you're doing.
I agree. um, that brings up another issue, is the amount of people that come into this industry and lie about experience. um,
Or
is pretty apparent. Like, you can see it a lot with
yeah,
new hires. Um, people claim all the time to have 10, 15 years experience, and they just clearly don't. And
yeah,
then, but they looked good on paper because they said they had all this experience, and so they got hired in
hmm,
at more than someone who's already been there for 5, 6 months and is doing really good.
yeah, and
And you know people talk about their wages, and when it finally gets around to it and you figure out that that person's making more than you, it's discouraging. It
Yeah.
makes you not want to work in the industry. It makes you do less work. It makes you,
Yep.
not that you shouldn't know what people are making around you, because you definitely should, but it should be the company's responsibility to uphold a moral standard of, you know, it to a degree it matters how much experience someone has, but they need to make the pay gaps big enough that they can fit in people that have been there longer and pay them correctly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always. I feel like you should have a number in mind to start someone at, and then once they prove that their experience actually means something, that's when you can be like, hey, now I'll give you the amount of money
Yeah,
that you're
it
worth.
should always be that 30-day review. Everyone starts at the same place, and you
Yep.
tell them in the interview, you know, 30-day review is when we will evaluate, you basically have to prove yourself in those 30 days.
Yeah.
And we will discuss wage further at that 30 days.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's definitely how it should be, and it's just that's not what happens.
no. Um, Another topic we have is time on feet. Um, in this industry, you don't get a lot of breaks, and the breaks you do get are kind of self-determined, stepping just away from the line.
Yeah, and
It's one of the only industries where you don't get to sit down and have a lunch. You don't get to walk away for 15 to 30 minutes. You're pretty much always working,
yeah,
and even when you have to eat, you have to find time to fit that in really quick.
yeah,
It's not something you can step off and go, hey, I'm taking my 30-minute break, I'm gonna go eat. It's just not, it's not really allowed.
yeah. I think a lot of people think that because we work with food all day and we work online with food all day, that we just have like we can just eat as much as we want or whenever we want. That's just not the case. Like we have to know whether it's going to be busy soon or whether it is busy at the moment. We can't step off during any of that. Um,
Yeah,
the only times we ever really get to step off and take a break is if there's a lull at all, or and that just doesn't always happen.
yeah, and it also forces you to get into the routine of eating at the off times. So basically, you work through what a normal human eats lunch at, and then you eat after.
Yeah,
And so you eventually get your body on this schedule of eating at the wrong times, essentially.
yeah,
Me personally, I usually eat lunch around 3, 4 o'clock, and then I'll eat dinner after I get home from a closing shift, or even when I'm not closing, I'll probably eat dinner around 9, 10 o'clock. It pushes your schedule back,
yeah,
because that's when you have time, is when people aren't eating.
yeah. And I think that promotes unhealthy schedules for some people, and
100%.
it also doesn't help when you do closes and then opens in the morning. Like I think that also creates unhealthy schedules where people don't get enough sleep before they have to come into work.
Yeah.
Um, like I think, especially with how restaurants generally are, where they close so much later than most other businesses do, and they don't keep a normal schedule like a lot of other businesses do, and they also open just as early as other businesses do. So if you have a close and then open, you're not going home and getting an ample amount of sleep before the next day.
No, and that brings the other issue in of, like, a lot of us rely on, energy drinks and caffeine just to get through the day, and then it starts becoming, a crutch.
Yeah, where you feel like
And
you can't make it through the day without that kind of stuff.
yeah, and then when I when I catch myself getting back into that, I'll be like, all right, no more caffeine for a few days, and I'll get really bad headaches. I won't be able to sleep like at all,
Yeah.
and it puts you in this funk of not being able to function as a normal human being because your job demands so much from you.
Yeah. And I think that's not healthy. Like in other industries, like even like construction, like that's a hard job. I'm never
Yeah,
take anything from construction, but generally they have a normal schedule where they can at least go home and get enough sleep, and you can't have that all the time as a cook.
no,
Now it's not as
it's
much physical labor as construction, but you are on your feet just as long, if not longer sometimes.
yeah, and I mean
Um,
it's also where sometimes you can't go home after 8 hours. Actually, a lot of the times it's like that.
yeah,
In busy season when there's a lot of stuff going on, you show up at 11 and you're not leaving until 11 or 12, you know?
yeah.
So,
The long shifts definitely do take a toll too, and you don't always get any kind of break in between that. Like,
and sometimes during the busy season, you don't find time to eat that one little meal during the day. So you haven't eaten all day either.
yeah,
And you've probably drank caffeine too. So it can really just mess with the flow of things.
yeah. And like there are certain things you can do to try and like get a quick bite. Like you can, like if there's a 30-second window you have, you can take a quick bite of something. But even that, like that's hard to find during some busy seasons.
Yeah. And we get used to eating cold food a lot too.
Oh yeah,
It's kind of like it's almost dehumanizing,
yeah,
because you can make yourself some nice food, but then you get a big party that comes in or something, you got to deal with it. Well, now you can't really just remake your food because you get one shift meal,
yeah,
and then so you're stuck eating cold food, and it feels kind of bad,
yeah.
because
I
you're like,
mean,
wow, I'm not even good enough to eat a hot meal, you know.
you could always pull an Applebee's and microwave it, you know.
You could always Applebee's it for sure.
But yeah, it does suck too because another thing, like you think you work at a restaurant, you have all this access to nice ingredients, you can make nice food and everything, and then you try to do that, and then it ends up getting cold and kind of being shitty anyway.
Yeah. And on that topic too, you just get sick of it. It doesn't matter how much ingredients you have at your disposal.
Yeah.
Like after a few months of working a restaurant, you just get sick of the food,
Yeah.
and it's hard to get out of that, And
Yeah.
and then you also come home and don't feel like cooking because you're so burnt out of it. So
Yeah.
you end up eating these basic meals that are unhealthy for you,
Yeah. Because
and it never gets better.
yeah, I'm not a very like picky eater at all, but there have been plenty of times, like even right now at the current place I work at, like I go in and I'm like, dang, what do I want to eat? And I think about it, I'm like, I've had everything here so many times. You can only do different combinations of things so many times before you're like, I just need something new, man. And working at a restaurant, because you have a stable menu, you have the same ingredients. It's you don't have much ability to have new things.
Yeah. It's hard to keep your creative cooking going when you're so sick of what you make,
Yeah.
and you just get into this rut of, okay, I guess I'm eating the same three things day in day out.
Yeah, which is
And
also unhealthy because your body
yeah,
needs variety.
it's hard to keep up on a good solid diet and taking care of yourself when, especially in the restaurant industry, because it's easy to pay less for food when you're working in a restaurant, but that food that you're offered is pretty unhealthy,
Yeah.
and it's it ends up hurting you more than helping you, I think.
Yeah. And it's not even always that it's unhealthy. Like, you can have healthy food in a restaurant, but it's also not as much variety as you need to have a full, complete diet. Because a diet
Correct.
does need to be varied in order to get all your nutrients that you need. And
Yeah.
that's tough when you're eating the same things every day.
Yeah.
And, like, it is nice that they do give you a shift meal, but at the same time, depending how busy it is, you don't have time to make yourself a shift meal.
Yeah. It's true. Um, Going back to being understaffed, I think that, we as a whole in the industry need to bump up what we start pay at, even for people with no experience, because there are people out there that truly do want to be a part of the industry and have no experience and are so willing to learn. But I feel like we look past those people because they don't have experience. And then, we don't give some of them enough time to actually train before we just write them off as never going to happen.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think,
but on the flip side of that, too, there are people that aren't part of the industry that get into it and they're shit. And
yeah,
they don't realize what they're getting themselves into. They think it's going to be a simple show up, collect a paycheck, and that's that. But they end up pissing everybody else off because, they're not doing what they need to be doing.
yeah. And, like, I think experience isn't always the telltale sign of talent either.
Yeah.
Like, you can find it in pretty much anything. I'm going to do a sports example because I like sports, but you have veteran NFL players sometimes that just aren't as good as the rookie coming in. Are you going to pretty much screw over the rookie just because they don't have as much experience? No. If they're better, they're going to get paid more.
Yeah.
And I think that's how it should be in pretty much any industry. And it's just, unfortunately, it's not like that. Experience in a lot of industries means more than actual being good at your job.
Yeah. And it, like we said earlier, it can be false experience too. Like, you know, most restaurants don't actually call the references on applications. They just don't, because they're so understaffed that they're desperate.
Yeah.
And they just go, "Oh, he says he has 7 years experience. Okay, let's get him in here."
I mean, for
And
all we
then,
know, he could have 7 years experience, but that 7 years experience could be him getting fired from other places because he's not good.
yeah, could have been 7 years experience at McDonald's.
Yeah.
It's or Applebee's, which is worse. Um, it's I've met so many cooks that say they have experience, and then I ask them where they worked, and they say Applebee's, and I go, okay, so you're gonna work Chef Mike all night. It's
Yeah.
I really do think that those kinds of people, like, it's obvious to me, but I think managers typically overlook it because they just need bodies.
Yeah.
And it's really upsetting because you try so hard to like train them and do it properly and include them in what you're trying to do, but they're just either walking away from you, not paying attention, you know claiming that they know how to do it better and then not doing it right at all.
Yeah.
And then it's disheartening, and then you stop training them, and then you get blamed for when they fuck up.
Yeah.
And
Or because you're hiring anyone with a pulse, pretty much, you have somebody good come in, and then they see the rest of the people that aren't as good, and they're like, I don't want to work with these people, and then they walk. So
Yep.
because you're not holding your standard, you have good people walk.
I actually think as of where you and I work, that has happened recently.
Yeah, I also think that's happened recently.
We did get that one good person in. I could tell he actually had experience,
Mm-hmm.
and he ended up walking because I think he looked around him and went, the standard is too low.
Yeah.
And I don't blame him, to be honest. Good for him for realizing that the standard was too low, and you know, getting out before he was too deep.
Yeah.
You know, I do want to touch on like some of the stuff that we've seen in restaurants that we've worked at that have been just kind of let go, that are kind of gross and terrifying.
Yeah.
Um, One of them being picking food up off the floor and trying to serve it. You know, I've seen that a
I
couple times.
personally have never seen somebody actually do that, and I would be horrified if I did actually see somebody try to do that.
It happens more than you think, and you know, to anyone that would listen to this that hasn't worked in a restaurant or a kitchen, you know, you need to realize when you go to a restaurant, you are at the whim of the cooks. And if no one's paying attention to the cooks and they don't have good morals, that kind of shit happens. And you know, it's gross.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why managers need to have higher standards
Yeah.
and set those rules of, if we ever see you doing these few things that are just intolerable, you're fired on the spot. But they won't do that because they're too understaffed and they need the body.
Yeah.
So in turn, you get a gross restaurant experience.
Yeah, I personally could not. Like, I would not work in a kitchen if I watched that happen and the managers were okay with it.
It's not less like they're okay with it. It's they're not paying attention enough to see it.
Gotcha.
It's negligence more than it is like letting it happen.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes, like, most restaurants aren't like that. Like, you know when going into a restaurant, if it's an open kitchen at least, like, depending on how people are doing, you could pretty much tell whether they're being good or not.
Yes,
And
but a lot of kitchens aren't open.
yeah, there are a lot of
This
non-open kitchens. I know
this
that.
goes for
And
fast food too. Like,
yeah, fast food, I guarantee people pick food up off the ground all
well,
the time
yeah,
in
fast food I think is worse because, you know, their demographic of hiring is, you know,
The
teenagers
yeah.
and people getting their first job, and
Yeah, people who don't care or think
Yeah.
it would be funny or
yeah, or you know, it's their friend or something, or their
Yeah.
friend's friend, and they're just like, haha, it's funny, which it's not.
no.
But I still have yet to see someone spit in food, so that's good.
I also have yet to see. I am almost 90% sure that that's mostly just a movie trope, but at the same time, if it is a movie trope, it had to have come from somewhere, right?
I mean, yeah, there's fact to the stereotype for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Like I don't think it happens at, often at all, but it definitely does happen somewhere. Some places.
it definitely happens. I don't think it's as common as
You might think.
like picking food up off the floor.
Yeah, that one is
Certainly.
definitely more common. Like I can see that one being more common. I personally have never seen it, but
I mean, I've talked to a few older cooks that, you know, remember the days when they were able to smoke cigarettes on the line.
yeah.
And if they were dealing with a bitchy customer or the food got sent back, you know, they would ash their cigarettes in the food. Um, that was a story I was told by someone that was in the industry for a very long time. That's really gross.
That is very gross. Like I
That isn't
understand.
even allowed anymore. So
Yeah. Like I
you don't have to worry
understand
about
being
that
mad
one.
at a customer for either having like being a Karen pretty much or just just sending food back unless they are just being a Karen. I can't imagine getting mad at someone for just sending back low quality food. But if they are being a Karen, I still don't understand the like retaliation for it. Like
Well, it's because cooks have egos and prides,
yeah.
and those things can get hurt very easily. Um, Even when they know it's coming from someone that doesn't know what they're talking about, or is a Karen, or just, you know, isn't, you know, a rich, you know, you can tell they're snobby. You
Yeah.
know, they still get hurt by it, and so they feel like they have to retaliate, otherwise people won't respect them or something. And that's just a bad mentality to have.
I also think that's a bad mentality to have. Like, I think the better way to go about it is to just, eat either the insult or whatever that they're trying to send at you, then just try to impress them with whatever you send back. Just try
Yeah.
to make it better.
And you know, I'll advocate for the customer a little bit here, which I hardly ever do, but there are times where even as a cook, I would want to send my food back. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes you get food that someone clearly just didn't care about. And, I've gone to restaurants and ordered steaks before that I've asked for medium rare and they come out over well done. And
Wow.
I can't eat it. It's not edible at that point.
Yeah.
And then you send it back and then they they retaliate with giving you a basically raw steak. And at that point, this was a real experience I had at a restaurant, and I just didn't eat the meal, and we got it taken off the bill, and we left. I just had to find a different meal that night,
Yeah.
and because I was with family and such, and it was dumb, like
Yeah.
the it's childish.
Yeah, I think that definitely the better way to go about it is admit either you made a mistake, like, because in that case, they definitely just made a mistake. Like, just admit, like, oh crap, I made a mistake. Yeah, I can
Yeah,
do that
you
for
forgot about it
you. Yeah.
because you were doing other things, which is fine. Just correct it.
Yeah.
But they don't. They take it to heart and they take it personally. And I've worked with cooks like that before, where they get something sent back and they're like, "That's fucking impossible. I sent that out perfect," and like everyone else in the kitchen knows damn well they didn't.
Yeah.
But they're too proud to just be like, "Okay, yeah, sure, I'll remake it."
And I think for a lot, like, because nobody's ever going to be perfect. Like,
No.
you are going to make a mistake at some point. And I think you definitely have to have some sort of insecurity, to
Oh, for
get
sure.
hurt from something like that. Because, like, unless you are just a little insecure about it, you have to know that it's never going to be perfect.
And listen, like, there's everyone's opinion of temperatures in meat is different.
Yeah.
Like my medium rare is probably rarer than what some people think medium rare is.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. So as a cook, if someone orders a medium rare burger from me and I give it to them how I think medium rare is, what I feel it out as, and they're like, "No, it's too rare," that's fair. Fine.
Yeah.
I'll redo it. I'll make it a little more cooked for you. That's
Yeah.
fine. It's never going to be, because we're not sitting there actually temping these burgers. You know?
No, that would just take way too much time.
Yeah, and that's another thing. It's like even the best cooks that I've seen, the workload on a busy day is too much to be able to do everything perfectly.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are a couple burgers that are going to go out over temp, and that's fine because they get sent back and you correct your mistake.
Yeah.
But the ones who take it personally are the problem.
Yeah. That's always the thing. Like, just don't take it personal, Like, either you made a mistake or the customer just was a little unclear on the directions, and
Yeah.
it's fine. You just remake it. It's okay.
And
The only ones that I could see getting mad at are the people who complain about a meal that they've completely finished. It's like, now you're just trying to get a free meal at that point.
Yep.
Like, they didn't make a mistake. You're just trying to get a free meal.
Yep.
And I actually
And
have a
that
story
part is-
about that, because at one of the places I worked at, we would do wings every Tuesday. And we had a customer that would come in, get the wings every single Tuesday, and then complain about them every single Tuesday. And one of our managers ended up going up to them and was like, all right, here, we do this every Tuesday. You come in every Tuesday. You order the wings every Tuesday. Like, if you don't like the wings, don't order them. We're not going to be giving them to you free. Like, if you don't like the wings, don't order them. And then because we stopped giving them to them for free, they stopped coming in and getting wings, you know?
Crazy. The thing is like, if someone, you have to realize that, like, customers that send food back, they don't know who made it. They don't know who you are.
Oh, yeah, that too.
So they're not like, oh, Biggs made this. It's shit sending it back. Like, it's not like that.
That's,
So they, you have a unbiased review, basically.
yeah, it's never that
About your
deep.
food.
Like, people never
Yeah.
are being prejudiced towards, like, who made it.
Like,
Unless,
the only way I can see, like, really taking it personally and, like, to heart is being like, okay, I'm consistently having this, my food sent back. There's got to be something wrong with how I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Rather than continually blaming the customers.
Yeah.
When, like, they don't know you. There's no reason for them to shit on you, you know?
Yeah.
But not everyone sees it like that.
Yeah. And I think that just goes with, like, any kind of, like, bad thing that happens. Everyone has a different reaction to it, and some people's are just worse than others.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to talk about, servers versus cooks. This is kind of a old mentality to have that I recently had gotten brought up by a new person. And one of the first things that they kind of like said to me was like, "Oh, this is a place where back of house gets along with servers," and
Yeah.
it kind of took me back because I haven't had that mentality in a kitchen for a while, and like it was like, well, yeah, like of course, like we're we work directly with them. Like, why would we just inertly hate them? It just didn't make sense. And he kind of like seemed to get like offended by my reaction, like I would stick up for servers. And it was just like, it I didn't know that even still existed, where
See,
we're doing this childish shit of like, just because they're servers, we don't like them because we're back of house. It doesn't make sense.
that is actually something that's interesting to me because I've only ever worked in two different places, and
Yeah.
both places that I've worked at, we've gotten along with the servers just fine. So there are places out there where the servers and back of house just don't get along at all.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the first time that I stepped foot in a certain kitchen, um, you know, we had cooks that would, you know, a server would mess up one thing, and they would scream at them, make them cry, like, you know, they had servers quit over the way that they were treated by the back of house,
What?
and I hated being a part of that.
Well, yeah. What good does that do? That doesn't do
Yeah,
any good for anyone.
it's horrible watching.
Like,
Like,
does it make
they
those
rang
people
in,
feel better?
yeah, they rang in a burger wrong on accident, and now they're getting screamed at by the kitchen, you know, and it's busy, so everyone's kind of stressed out anyway, and then they start crying, and then it's just why, like, there's no reason for it. You just say okay, and you remake the burger and move on.
Yeah.
Like,
Like, there's no
it,
reason to tear someone down because they made a mistake. Everyone makes a mistake. Like,
yeah, but I think that's a thing that used to be a lot more common in kitchens than it is now. It's just that raw aggressiveness in that, people wanted the back of house to feel, you know, uncomfortable to people that weren't part of it. They wanted that stigma. They wanted you know, the look at me. I'm part of something that, like, you don't want to be a part of.
I don't understand that mentality. Like, why would you want to alienate people from like what you're doing? Like, why would you want to make it a hostile environment for other people to be around? Like, I don't understand why people would want to do that.
I think it was an ego thing for a lot of the older generation of cooks. It was we're badass, we're hardcore, you know, don't fuck with us. It's kind of like being in like a biker gang. Like, realistically, they're all pretty nice people. Like,
Yeah.
but you walk up to a biker gang, you're intimidated, right?
Yeah.
So I think it was that same mentality of, like, they just wanted to be intimidating, you know?
That's interesting. I didn't know that kitchens used to be like that.
Yeah, it's like walking into a grimy tattoo shop for the first time. You know, you don't know anyone there. They all look intimidating. That's how they wanted it to be.
Yeah.
It's not really like that anymore, I don't think. At least the kitchens I've worked in
See,
recently.
that reminds me of like people who gatekeep communities in like gaming or in other like areas too. Like they make a hostile environment for people to try to get into so that only the like people who are hardcore in it or have been in it for a long time can enjoy themselves with that thing. And I just don't understand why you would want to do that to your community. Like if there's something you enjoy or something that you want to share with other people, or well, I guess these people
Oh,
don't want to share, but like something that you enjoy
yeah.
or something like that,
I
wouldn't you
don't think
want
you.
to share it to other people and want to have that like community grow? Like it makes more sense to want that thing to grow and stay alive than have it die because nobody wants to get into it because you're gatekeeping it and making it not fun for anyone to want to get into.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even think that these people liked being cooks. I think it was something forced onto them, um, because there was nothing else that they could do.
Yeah.
Because if you look at most of the older generation, at least the ones that I've dealt with in kitchens, they're not very smart people, and they are usually some form of racist, sexist, homophobic, and then they bring in that aggression with it too.
That is another thing that I don't like about kitchens is I have worked in a couple of kitchens where there's been people who uh, talk about servers in very inappropriate ways. It's not like that in every kitchen, especially now. Like
Yeah, it's.
most
I think it's
kitchens are
still.
very much more inclusive and everything. But I've worked in kitchens where some of the cooks would talk inappropriately about the servers, and it would just make me uncomfortable because it's like I'm at work. I don't want to.
Yeah,
I don't look at the servers like that. Like they're a coworker to me, and it.
I think
I
those are the people that end up coming and going.
yeah.
I don't think those people nowadays ever get to be, in the core group anymore. I don't think they last long enough
Yeah, because I feel like
because of that.
because most of the core group is also in the same like headspace that I'm in. Like we don't want to work with that. We don't want to talk about that kind of stuff. Like
Yeah. I mean, I think people are more apt to speak up about that stuff nowadays too.
yeah,
Whereas, back then, when they were in their prime, no one really was speaking up about it.
yeah,
So it just kind of got let go, and then they could keep doing it.
yeah. Because even the people that didn't want to partake in stuff like that would just kind of go with it because they didn't want to alienate themselves in the kitchen. You know.
Yeah, they wanted to still be a part of it because that's where they worked.
Yeah.
And nowadays, I think, you know, you and I and other people, we will speak on other people's behalf if
Yeah.
we see something that, we didn't like.
And
Because I guarantee
unfortunately,
you, if you and I didn't like it, the person that was at the other end of it didn't like it either.
Oh yeah, they definitely didn't like it. They liked it less than we did.
Yeah.
And
But unfortunately, some of them still don't speak up. And
yeah,
then, you or I tried to speak up, and we get told we can't because they didn't bring it up.
yeah. And I think, unfortunately, like we've had to do that, like at the place we work at now. We don't.
Yeah.
We haven't had to. We've only had to do it once.
Yeah.
But it is nice to know that like your core of people and the people that
Yeah.
do stick around
They won't
don't
tolerate
tolerate. They don't tolerate that kind of stuff.
And, it didn't used to be like that. The first two kitchens I worked in were very much not like that. You know, it sucked
Yeah.
because, you see something like that that's just generally wrong. And, you can't say anything about it because really it's none of your business. But, you know, it just gets let go, and it sucks.
Yeah.
But I think it's getting better.
Yeah.
Generally,
Yeah. I think that is getting better.
I still think I think you still have the same amount of creeps that come in and out of kitchens. But
And
when
generally, it's
they
the older cooks that
yeah
are hopping around that end up happening with. Like, I feel like
yeah
a lot of the younger generation of cooks and stuff like that,
yeah
they don't even partake in that kind of stuff. They don't like it's not a
yeah
problem. It's your older cooks that are hopping around that you end up having that. But that's probably just because when they were younger, what they did. You know.
yeah, which isn't an excuse.
It's not an excuse, but um some of them more than others are more open to be like, oh, if that's not okay, that's not okay, and they stop instantly.
Yeah
Others aren't as open to that, and they say like, oh no, this is the way we've been doing it. Like I've talked like this for. It's like,
yeah
well, we don't do that here, and then they just don't stop, and then they
yeah
have to get either let go or they get pushed out because we don't want to deal with that.
yeah. I think it's still at the point where we're gonna have to deal with it for a little while. But once those older cooks eventually just can't do the job anymore, I think we're gonna get rid of it.
Yeah,
Not completely, but for the
yeah.
most part.
With any kind of negative thing, it'll never get rid of entirely. Like you'll always have a few bad apples,
Yeah.
but I think as like time goes on, I think there will be fewer and fewer of
Yeah.
those. And and the worst part is because those like bad apples exist and stuff, it can drive other people away too.
Correct.
Because like if they're
Speaking of bad apples, Applebee's.
Applebee's is very bad.
It's a bad apple.
That is a very bad apple.
But yeah, I do think that like kitchen image as a whole has been a problem for me because I feel like you get like one or two of those guys in there that say things in an above average volume and servers start hearing it and then they rope everyone in the kitchen together with
Yeah.
what's being said.
Yeah, and
And
that's something that I would never want. Like if I'm in a kitchen, I would never want to be part of a kitchen where people are thinking that everyone in the kitchen is saying stuff like that. Because that is
yeah,
something I would never want to be attached to.
I don't like my image being tarnished because someone came up to me and, was telling me to check out a server's ass or something.
Yeah, and I've had that
I
happen to me, and I'm like, dude, I
yeah,
don't want to
you
be.
and I both.
I was like, I don't want to talk about that. Like, my it doesn't matter, but my girlfriend works here. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't even if she didn't work here. Like, I don't want to talk. Like, the servers are my friends and stuff. Like, I talk
Yeah.
to them like they're coworkers. I don't talk about them in that way. I don't look at them in that way.
Like, and maybe that's why they're always so bad at their jobs is because they're more focused on like watching the servers and what they're doing rather than, focusing on the job that they have to do.
Yeah.
And which makes sense,
Yeah.
but they're there for the wrong reason.
Yeah. And when you're there for the wrong reason, quality food goes down.
Yep.
Production goes down, and you end up pushing other people out
because of it.
Yeah, and it always goes back to quality, turnover, stuff like that. Like,
yep, it's all a big cycle.
Yeah.
And it really does come from the top. If they would just do better interviews and vet their interviews and the new hires a little better.
Yeah.
I think it wouldn't be a problem.
And like I do want to give them like a little bit of slack. Like as a business owner or a manager running a business, like you have to make sure you're staffed enough. And
yeah,
like as much as I want them to do like they can definitely do better in my opinion, but at the same time if you look at it from their point of view, like they're just trying to keep it staffed enough. And
that's it's an interesting line to ride, I think.
Yeah.
Because generally I feel like if you talk to your core group, your full-time employee core group, it was like, hey, like, and you just flat out ask them, would you rather me keep hiring people and trial and erroring it until we find someone, or would each of you like 3 more hours a week? I guarantee you it'll be the second one.
Yeah. Me personally, I would be like, hey, I'll work either an extra day or I'll come in earlier or I'll stay a little bit later every now and then or a couple times a week or whatever, if it means we can take more time to find better people 100%. To put on the line.
And it sucks too because they'll hire a batch of people that aren't going to work out and then they'll just stop looking.
Yeah.
And then when they eventually get rid of themselves or get fired or just walk, then they start the hiring process again.
What gets me...
It just makes it take more time.
Yeah. And what gets me is we've definitely had it before where one of the managers was like, oh yeah, I don't think this guy's going to work out. It's like, then why are you hiring him?
Yeah.
If you don't think he's going to work out, like, why?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
I've made a habit of when I'm there and they get done with an interview, I will just straight up ask, like, hey, how'd that interview go? And I'd say a good 7 out of 10 times I get the, I wasn't really feeling it. And then they're on the schedule.
Yeah. It's like, if you weren't feeling it, why are they on the schedule? Like, don't put them on.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
And then what also gets me is when you put them on the schedule, but you put them on the schedule right away, and you don't know if they're going to work out or not, and then they end up not working out, and then you're calling people and you're like, hey, can you pick up this shift? It's like, just schedule them in a way where if they're not there, it doesn't matter.
They need to be extra bodies, not a core body.
Exactly. Until we are for sure, like, they've stayed for pretty much their 30 days or whatever, and you think they're going to be fine, they have to be an extra body. They can't be a body.
Yeah. I also think with new hires, I've seen across most restaurants that the training time is not long enough.
Yeah, they never let, like, they basically say, oh yeah, you get 1 day to train and then they expect you to know everything. It's like, that is not long enough.
Yeah. I mean, the restaurant that you and I are at now, it's 5 days. And, for some people that actually do have the experience, that's fine. But there are other people that don't have the experience that 5 days is just not long enough.
Yeah, like you can't expect...
It needs to be a person-to-person basis rather than just across the board 5 days.
Yeah, because you can't expect somebody who's had no experience in restaurants at all to, in 5 days, be able to do everything in a kitchen.
Yeah.
That's just unreasonable.
Yeah. All right, I think that gets us through the list
Yeah,
that I have prepared.
and that gives us pretty close to the time where we set aside for it.
All right.
Any last shits on Applebee's you want to put in?
Yeah. If you go to Applebee's, would you rather have the apple or the bees? For me, it would be probably the bees because they would probably have microwaved the apple.
Would they have microwaved the bees too?
I don't think they're like animal abusers, so but they are in a way animal abusers because they microwave steaks.
That's just pain.
Anyway,
Yep. This has been a good
this
episode.
this has been Pop Behind with your host Biggs
And Kane.
Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.
Peace.